These guys technically count as large units, even though, like, the goblin on top of the spider is actually probably shorter than an orc boy. Today we've got a replay between RubberDuck of War, who has his own YouTube channel here. He's playing the Wood Elves up against Guacc. This is from the Warhammer World Championship. Guacc, of course, the player who won the qualifier that I hosted for the last ever chosen, so definitely a very solid player. RubberDuck of War, also very good. Wood Elves versus Greenskins, of course. We've got Spider Riders. We'll be featuring them today. Quickly, just to go over the army builds: 4 Spider Riders, 3 Spider Rider Archers. We've got Orc Boys up front, a couple of Stone Trolls, Gron the Paunch leading the way, Orc Shaman, currently brain bursting, some Dryads there, a couple Savage Biggins in the back, Rusty Airs, and regular Goblin Archers up against Durthu and Ariel. Some Starfire Shaft Glade Guard. We've got Glade Riders with spears, some Eternal Guards, obviously with shields, War Dancers in the back, and yeah. That's basically it. Spider Riders, though. What makes them so great, obviously, besides the fact that they're, you know, relatively low cost, light cavalry that have pretty decent stats considering the cost. I mean, they're not quite like mounted Empire State troops, but they do have poison, 45 armor, and a missile block chance, Strider, and Vanguard, of course. Strider is really nice to have on any light cavalry unit, but obviously the poison is really what makes them stand out. They do have a little bit better melee stats, obviously, than the Archer counterpart. 30 melee defense in particular for a light cavalry like this that also has poison means low-tier units actually won't deal a ton of damage to them, you know, given the right situation. We've got nice frontline engagement going off here. Eternal Guards mixing it up with Orc Boys. This is going to be a pretty good engagement for the Orc Boys overall. They'll trade relatively cost-effectively there due to their high weapon strength. Similar-ish melee stats. Glade Guards, probably a little bit better stat spread overall, but big old engagement here in the center. Durthu comes in. We're going to see some Soul Stealer from Ariel going after those trolls there. Trolls obviously resistant to magic, but they are taking significant damage from a whole bunch of different stuff. But the Spider Riders making their way up and around, doing the typical light cavalry thing of pressuring ranged units here. They do get countered somewhat by the Glade Riders, and Glade Riders higher charge, better stats overall, probably going to win that engagement, especially if they got the charge, but keep in mind Spider Riders obviously will come back, and just the fact that they're much cheaper means that you can bring them in greater numbers. While being popped now, and you can see they're up to 46 attack, 34 weapon strength, so during this power spike they're actually going to do a pretty significant amount of damage. Watch these Starfire Shafts here get inundated, even as the War Dancers kind of swing in, counter collapse. The Starfire Shaft's still basically done for at this point. And not to mention, if they are able to shoot at all, of course, that poison does have a significant effect on weapon strength and missile damage as well. I have made a video previously about the missile Spider Riders, but today I wanted to talk more specifically about the melee Spider Riders. In this matchup in particular, I think they're fantastic. Given that they do have a missile block chance, their poison and like decent-ish stats means they'll trade okay against a lot of Wood Elf units, particularly their skirmishers. Like here, you can see 27 melee defense on Glade Guard. It's pretty good for a skirmisher. That 22 attack and 22 charge bonus, as a result, like, not going to be crazy good. But the other thing, obviously, as well about goblins and in general is that they can be buffed to punch way above their weight class, and that certainly is true of Spider Riders. Spider Riders also a decent candidate for max chevron, and you don't see it so much anymore. It used to be a relatively common piece. But, yeah, you do give them some chevrons, their stats become even better. But, Spider Riders just kind of protecting the Archers here as they skirmish in on the Glade Riders with spears. If you take a look, one important role, of course, as you guys should know by now from watching my channel, of any light cavalry is chasing routing units. Got some detaching to do just that here. Same thing over here, like getting at these routing Eternal Guards, Glade Guards with Azrai Spears, and the poison just allows them, and the Strider as well, to chase that much more effectively. Like, they can actually keep up with their quarry. Do make note that Spider Riders do have slower speed than a lot of other light cavalry. They rely on the poison to kind of bring things down to their level, but obviously Wolf Riders are going to be faster in the 90 speed range. These guys are 78, still pretty fast, and especially with the Strider, functionally, they're probably faster than a lot of other cavalry up and down slopes and so forth. But yeah, at this point, the infantry fight went pretty decisively in the Wood Elves' favor, but Durthu just pushing forward, wrecking the center pocket. Ariel as well, obviously causing huge terror issues for the Greenskins. Not to mention the summoned Feral Manticore here as well. You can see the Greenskins forces are fairly well scattered, but this presence of Spider Riders still online here. The regular Spider Riders connecting on a charge there. They do have quite a bit more HP, I believe, than Blade Riders. I guess we'll have to compare that in the post-battle report. They're not shock cavalry in the same sense that the Blade Riders with spears are. Like, you'll notice their tooltip just says cavalry. They're just kind of generalist light cavalry, but with poison, which makes them, by default, like, very, very strong. That's one of the reasons that Poison Hounds are so good, too. Now, granted, you can mix them, and you can also mix Spider Riders and Wolf Riders, of course. But, yeah, the Archers moving in here. Getting these poor War Dancers who give a nice little scream there as they get charged down. But just in the kind of background here, you can see there's still this rallied unit of Spider Riders here. This one comes in to clean up those Eternal Guards there. Again, just cleaning up these routing units very cost efficiently, not allowing them to escape generates some great, great value. Durthu, unfortunately, does get routed off here by this Orc Shaman. Some Stone Trolls come in, a handful of tattered Orc Boys is going to go down. Savage Orc Biggins, of course, as well, contributing greatly to that. And with that, that's going to put a pretty severe dent in the balance of power. Ariel's still over here trying to chase the Rusty Airs off, also getting counter-chased by Ground the Paunch. But the rest of the Wood Elf forces here don't really have a chance to rally and come to the aid of their legendary Lord and Lady, because these Spider Riders, pesky Spider Riders, just keep pressuring. We've got some boys here, of course, as well. Nice little rear charge action, sweeping up and around. We'll see. Hopefully they don't rout before they actually get this rear charge. But, yeah, here, once they do get the charge, they get a little bit of leadership buffs from winning combat. They're still shaken, but nice wah, final timing push to finish things off. And, yeah, these Eternal Guards actually do rout those boys, but then immediately just get overwhelmed by angry goblins on spiders. Good thing, I should say, anybody who does play Total War Warhammer multiplayer, or just Total War Warhammer in general, hopefully you don't have arachnophobia, because you're basically guaranteed to see some kind of spider when you're playing Greenskins. Spider Riders are just that good, especially in multiplayer. Like, if you're not bringing Spider Riders and Spider Rider Archers, you're probably playing Greenskins wrong, to be honest. At least a unit or two of them. Sometimes I'll swap out for the Wolf Rider Archers just because they're cheaper and a little bit faster, but against a faction like most Elves that are somewhat weak to numbers, they just give you that extra mobility, poison kind of utility. It serves many roles and is basically beneficial against pretty much any army. You do have Squig Hoppers as well, that are a little bit more expensive. They don't have yeah, we'll kind of do some comparisons in just a minute with the Squig Hoppers and some other light cavalry, but very well played to both, have to say. Very close game at the end of the day. Unfortunately, Durthu and Ariel just overextending a little bit from their support, getting caught out there, while the Spider Riders did a great job. Only one of them doesn't pay for itself. This other one comes pretty close. We'll call that a win, and this one almost doubles up in terms of value. Of course, the Spider Rider Archers also generating some excellent value as well. So all of the Spider Riders just did a great job, honestly, helping to keep the Wood Elves on the back foot, which in this kind of numbers game here, these light cavalry do serve a particularly great purpose. And how about these guys? 83 kills, too. Pretty impressive against the Elves. This one Biggin also racked up a ton of value. I think they're the ones who got a lot of damage against Durthu. Orc Boys, pretty decent in this matchup. They'll generally trade cost effectively with most Wood Elf infantry. Grom also pretty nice here. Yeah, Stone Trolls didn't have to do too much. They kind of got steamrolled a little bit. Durthu and Ariel both getting some great value. Eternal Guards having a little bit more of a rough time. Same thing with the War Dancers. Blade Guards, a little bit of a mixed bag, but some of them did relatively well shooting the Stone Trolls. Starfire Shafts, certainly, even though you get, you know, the missile resistance and the fire resistance kind of canceling each other out, the armor-piercing damage then just goes through more or less straight up, so it is pretty good for shooting Stone Trolls to have the Starfire Shafts. Anyway. Yeah, very fun stuff. Let's just kind of quickly finish up on some comparisons here. So with the melee Spider Riders, they sit at an interesting kind of midpoint for Greenskins light cavalry, and I would say Greenskins probably have the best light cavalry overall in the game, just because you have the best selection, and only 400 points for these Spider Riders. Like I said, you can chevron them up all the way to 600 points. Gives them 38 melee defense, which is actually pretty solid. And the extra leadership certainly Nothing to scoff at. Puts them all the way up to 60, which is not, again, not amazing, but it's okay. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend this a lot of the time, but you can do it if you want to. But even just at 400 points, like 4 of these guys can be very, very cost effective. And there are even some, like, against maybe Wood Elves or, I don't know, the Wolf Rider Archers, just in comparison, for 100 extra points, again, you get less speed, but basically everything else is better. In particular, plus 10 melee defense, 30 melee defense for a light cavalry unit like this at this cost is pretty good if we compare to some other cheap light cavalry. I know yeomen are not the most awesome unit to begin with for comparison, but they only have 26 melee defense, right? 4 melee defense less than the Spider Riders, and you consider also that the poison will be debuffing your opponent's weapon strength, so hits that do get through aren't going to be doing as much damage. Spider Riders also slightly more HP as well. We switch over to the Wood Elves and compare kind of the Elven, you know, shock cavalry archetype, which can stand in for Reavers or for Dark Riders as well, all very similar type units. Yeah, Spider Riders, slightly more health, 150 cost less, that 30 extra armor too is quite nice, and the same melee defense, which is pretty surprising. Obviously much less leadership, slower, less charge. Like I said, they're just regular cavalry rather than shock cavalry, as you see here in the tooltip. But just the stats are just really cost effective for what they give you. Not to mention, of course, buffing them up. Also, Wurzag is excellent for them. His Bonewood Staff providing a constant stream of extra melee attack, 12 melee attack, puts him up to 34, which is really good. And the charge bonus as well isn't super impactful, but it is a little extra something on that 22%. So, yeah, not bad. In terms of other units, like I said, the Wolf Riders, I do think it's a worthwhile upgrade for the most part if you have the extra funds. Squig Hoppers don't have a missile block chance and less armor and less defense, so they're squishier than Spider Riders. They have slightly more HP, but not really enough to make up for the lost stats. Slightly faster. They have armor-piercing anti-infantry weapon strength, which is obviously a lot of what you're paying for, plus 10 bonus versus infantry. And immune to psychology, but 250 points more expensive, and kind of this comparison once again makes the Spider Riders look very cost effective, and that's because they are. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.